Subcultures. At their best, they can create large-scale societal awakenings, produce high-quality art, and create communities where people feel like they belong. At their worst, however, subcultures can actively worsen people's mental health, promote harmful behavior, and ruin people's lives. That's right, in today's list, I'm going over the 10 cringest subcultures. This is a sequel to my first video about the top 10 coolest subcultures. These are the top 10 cringest. This is the cultural gutter where bad ideas proliferate themselves. And I would not recommend any of you viewing this video join any of these subcultures because they are all across the board essentially hot trash, and I don't like any of them. Keep in mind, this is only my opinion, and as with the last video, this is nowhere near a complete list of all subcultures or anything. Not even all cringe subcultures, these are just the ones that grind my gears the most. And with that, let's get into the degeneracy and check out the top 10 cringest subcultures. Alright, at number 10 we have the emos. You all saw this coming. Emo is the insecure, whiny, younger cousin of the goth subculture. That really is all emo is. It's just a shitty ripoff of goth with much less substance, a lot less way shittier fashion, and we get figures like Onision out of the emo scene. Luckily, of course, goth culture has a lot more staying power, so you still see a ton of goth people, but you rarely, if ever, see any emos nowadays. They all kind of went out of vogue around 2015, if I recall correctly, and they really haven't been seen since. The emo subculture, for the most part, just created an unhealthy mental environment where people who are suicidal or depressed or the like would just put on a bunch of mascara and listen to depressing songs, which only sent them further into a spiral of self-inflicted sadness and just constant terrible feelings about themselves and the world. And ultimately, I think the emo subculture was symptomatic and emblematic in many ways of the 2000s. It really couldn't have existed during any other decade because we did have the war on terror, shitty presidential administration, and overall just kind of a bummer of 10 years going on there. Now, Green Day, obviously, is not an emo band. They're just a straight rock band, and one of the best rock bands of the 2000s, I would argue, maybe of the 21st century, given the way that rock is headed. But what is undoubtedly an emo band would be My Chemical Romance with their album Welcome to the Black Parade, hailed as the best emo album. Generally, I fucking hate this album. There's absolutely no depth or nuance or subtlety to it. It's just about how you get cancer and then you die. Which is like, yeah, no shit, we all die. There's nothing interesting about that. There's no substance. It takes all the depth and weight of cool goth songs by like The Cure and Susie and the Banshees back in the 80s, and it just takes a big diarrheal dump all over that and just goes. That's what I generally think of when I think emo. I just think a bunch of whiny screaming. We also get really terrible comics from the emo scene, like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac by Jonan Vasquez, one of the worst cartoonists of all time. Overall, the emo scene was really just a terrible invention, and I'm so glad that it's petered out and we don't have to put up with it anymore. Alright, next up, at number 9, we have fandoms. I'm not talking any specific fandom. There are quite a few fandoms that fall under this umbrella of being obsessed to the point of toxicity. I'm talking bronies, I'm talking Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, certainly, and of course the Rick and Morty fandom, the most misogynist, toxic, shit-brained fandom out there, which for over a decade ruled the animation sphere and drove me up a fucking wall. There's nothing wrong with enjoying movies or TV shows or the like. There's a good bit of escapism to be had in fiction. I myself exclusively create fictional worlds and entertainment for people to enjoy. What rubs me the wrong way is when people obsess over these fictional worlds to the point where it consumes their entire life, and they don't engage with multiple fictional worlds, of course. They just latch on to one and it becomes their entire personality. And they never engage with anything else in any substantive or compelling ways. They just kind of form this entire weird thing around like Undertale or whatever. Overall, I don't think intellectual property is worth getting that invested in unless you made the intellectual property yourself. Like, I get George Lucas being into Star Wars because he made Star Wars, but if you're just some guy and you didn't make Star Wars, like, why do you care so much about Star Wars? Again, there's nothing wrong with like liking Star Wars, but if you call yourself like the big simpin' Star Wars king and you just buy like every lightsaber, you'll like watch every Star Wars show even if it's like fucking shit and George Lucas has nothing to do with it. You just watch Obi-Wan Kenobi because they're like, it's a Star Wars show, I gotta watch the fucking shitty spin-off. I gotta watch the Bad Batch in the Book of Boba Fett, because how else am I supposed to get my Star Wars fix? Just watch some other sci-fi shit, there's plenty. But fans generally can't do that, and fans are oftentimes extremely toxic and short-sighted. Let's be honest, they don't have the most expansive perspective. I think it's very important when consuming fiction to think critically about it, notice when mistakes are made, and also to engage with more than one perspective and more than one fictional narrative, so you get the widest possible range of everything that's out there, like a smorgasbord buffet, and you don't just limit yourself to beef stroganoff all day, because you need a healthy, balanced, and diverse selection of movies and TV shows. You can't just watch the same thing over and over again, or you will go fucking insane, which of course is the case with a lot of fandoms, particularly the Brony fandom. But that's enough of that. Let's get on to the next one. Alright, at number 8 we have the alcoholic subculture. Now, I'm not talking about Alcoholics Anonymous or some 12-step support group. I'm talking about a literal alcoholics subculture, which primarily, from what I can tell, exists for the most part here in Denver, although I'm sure it also exists in other cities with a big craft beer scene and a lot of microbreweries popping up. For whatever reason, despite alcohol being one of the most destructive drugs historically, it just rips families apart, destroys marriages, pulls parents away from their children. Some people legitimately fetishize the alcoholic lifestyle and actually think it's cool to guzzle booze all day. Now again, everything in moderation. If you drink a beer with your dinner, that's fine. Nobody gives a shit. If you have a wine with your dinner, that's fine. Nobody gives a shit. If you buy a can of pale ale out on a night on the town, nobody gives a shit, right? Everyone drinks. I don't drink. I don't drink shit. I think all alcohol tastes like fucking sewer piss. But point being, if you drink, that's fine. These are people who drink so much and so often and legitimately do have a problem with addiction to alcohol, but they don't seek help for it. Instead, they form like this weird cult around it and are just like, I'm so fucking cool. Look at me posing with my fucking beer koozie and my fucking craft beer guide here, guys. Aren't I cool? And I get stoners, you know. This is like a parallel to stoners, because like with stoners, right, that's cool. Like smoking marijuana, having bong expertise and CBD and THC, you know, being like a bit of an amateur chemist with the marijuana plant. That's cool. And ultimately, you're not like fucking destroying your marriage because you light up a bong. But alcohol is legitimately like a destructive, horrible drug that overall just like ruins society if it's done in excess. There's nothing cool about being an alcoholic. As opposed to a stoner, if you're an alcoholic, you just vomit all over and then shit yourself. Now, a lot of people obviously belong to this subculture. There's a publication that's extremely cringe called Modern Drunkard Magazine, which basically fetishizes the alcoholic lifestyle and goes, fuck yeah, let's get fucking drunk, sauced out of our heads, bros. And of course, there's a certain local cartoonist who I absolutely fucking hate, and I don't think his comics are good at all. I'm not going to name him, but he is certainly a proponent of this toxic, destructive, alcoholic lifestyle. Yeah, overall, I don't understand why anyone would actively choose to promote, like, alcohol to the extent of all else, and just, like, actively destroy their families and lives. Like, there's legitimately an article I read about this guy who just has, like, a giant fucking beer cooler in his basement, just, like, 500 cans of booze, and then he wonders why his sons don't appreciate him or acknowledge him as, like, a competent father. He's like, why don't my kids like me? Maybe it's because you're a fucking lush. Like, I'm not for prohibition or anything. I think you should be able to drink beer, because it's not gonna kill you. But if you drink too much beer, it will kill you. So, like, just don't be an alcoholic. Just drink in moderation, I guess, is the point here. Just don't make that your entire fucking personality, because you'll be extremely annoying, and people whose lives have actually been destroyed by alcoholism will find that, like, really fucking insensitive and tasteless and tacky. Alright, at number 7 we have a group that I have dunked on for a long time, the Weebs, otherwise known as the anime fans. God damn, these people annoy me. Like, they're really smug, right? They're like, I consume cartoons from Japan, so I'm a world-class auteur, and I enjoy a wide diversity of cultural tastes. But the problem with this point is that they only consume media from Japan. They don't watch shit from Canada, Brazil, France, Italy, Sweden, South Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Taiwan, the Philippines, Indonesia, or any of the 100 plus other countries that exist besides America and Japan. In their minds, America and Japan are the only two countries that exist, and if they watch cartoons from Japan, this makes them special. Now, I've been outspoken in my criticism of modern-day Japan as a monarchist ethno-state whose emperor is the grandson of a literal fascist. Japan, back during World War II, committed a heinous genocide in China and then failed to apologize, still actively celebrate their Nazi war heroes to this day on Japanese shrines that are constructed throughout the nation, and they still have a monarchy in place which actively perpetuates a terrible system where nobody gets to vote and nobody has any say in what goes on. Generally, I don't agree politically, economically, or ideologically with Japan. I, for one, love the country of China, not only its people, but also its government. I'm a big hardcore fan of the Chinese Communist Party, the Democratic People's Republic of China, and President Xi Jinping, who I think is one of the most important and admirable figures in modern world history. Now, Google tells me that the equivalent for a weeb for China is called a cinephile, and I think that's pretty fucking cool. I'm a fucking cinephile. Cinephiles rise up. China is an extremely admirable nation. Culturally, economically, societally, you name it, China's got it. But we here in America tend to be ridiculously racist towards China. Meanwhile, we consume all this crap from Japan. And look, there's some good movies from Japan. I'm a big fan of Godzilla. But on average, I don't find Japanese movies or shows nearly as compelling as I do movies and shows from, like, Mexico, France, 100 other places that aren't Japan. And surely, Japanese people can relate and identify and consume this stuff way better than, like, some fucking nerdy American college student who's never stepped out of his fucking dorm room in his entire life can, right? Overall, the weeaboo fandom just kind of gives me these vibes of cultural appropriation and fetishization of a country that people here in America don't even really seem to understand the extremely messed up history of. Like, Japan is not just this magical fantasy land where you go and you get a hot anime waifu who wants to smooch you. Like, It's full of sex trafficking and organized crime, and it's a monarchist ethno-state where like 97.9% of the people are the same race. And generally, I prefer diversity in my countries, like call me crazy, but I like countries with diversity. And statistically speaking, China has more diversity than Japan, ethnically anyway. They're only like 87% Han Chinese, so I like China. Again, Japan makes some okay movies every now and again, but they're not like exceptional at the cultural output they make or anything. So I just have no idea why we stupid Americans are just like, yeah, Japan, Japan, Japan. And this is the only country that we give like any credit to in terms of like movies or shows or comics or anything. We're just like, Japan, Japan, Japan. Back in the 2000s, there was a really funny skit on SNL where like Jimmy Fallon would like dress up as like a weeb, and it basically meant like make fun of the weeb lifestyle and point at it and be like, yeah, this guy's a fucking weirdo and a fucking idiot, and he doesn't really like tend to understand like history or just like basic like quality standards. He's just kind of a doofo. These days, I guess the weeb lifestyle is all in. I don't like it, and I'll always be a hardcore Xi Jinping simp and cinephile over here. I fucking love China. The People's Republic of China. Remain loyal to you. Alright then, moving right along, we have the number 6 spot, gamers. Yet another group that I've spoken about in the past. I think gamers are annoying as fuck. Now, much like with the alcoholic subculture, if you just play a video game for entertainment or escapism every once in a while, that's fine. Video games are also a highly addictive substance that has the potential to ruin your life and your brain. Don't worry, I'm not one of these idiot conservatives who implies that just because you play a video game where you shoot a bunch of people, you'll go out and commit a mass shooting in real life, because that's fucking ludicrous and has no basis in science. What I will argue is that if you play too many video games, you will become a fucking idiot. When you play too many video games, your brain just becomes fucking soup, and you lack the ability to think about art on a higher level and read like entire novels. Your attention span goes way down, and your media literacy skills also go right down to the shitter. Gamers are extremely annoying in that they insist that video games be accepted as high art and the fancy shit. This is high art, this is just any other form of art. Us gamers are legitimate, bro. Video games are the stupidest form of art. They're the lowest form of art compared to like albums, movies, music, comics, paintings, novels, especially fucking novels. When was the last time you saw a fucking gamer pick up some fucking Dostoevsky? It doesn't happen, bruh. Yeah, video games are fucking stupid. They lack narrative complexity. They don't look good. People who use them generally just don't understand reality or how the real world works. And generally, I think video games do destroy lives. There are way too many people just playing fucking Fortnite all day, playing League of Legends, who don't engage with the real world, don't engage with other forms of immersive fiction, and just sit around all day and fucking play Fortnite. And that's honestly just like a parasitic tumor on culture and society, and people deserve so much better than just to languish around and play fucking Fortnite. Like, it's fucking depressing just to think of how many fucking gamers there are. Gaming is a sad, pathetic hobby for ultimately sad, pathetic people, and nobody should play too many video games. Just read a fucking book, please. And if you define yourself as a gamer, then it's probably too late for you. Your brain is probably already just a big soup. At number 5, we have a similar niche, Cryptobros. What more needs to be said about crypto, really? Imaginary nerd money is one of the most pathetic movements of the 21st century. It achieves nothing of substance, wastes everyone's time, ultimately perpetuates the capitalist exploitation that it's supposedly marketed as combating. Really, it's just a response to the 2008 Great Recession, which lacks economic comprehension and doesn't really understand that you don't solve the inherent problems of capitalism by just inventing fake nerd capitalism where you can just have money on a computer. That doesn't fix anything. You're still just a rich asshole. Yeah, cryptocurrency really is a movement for complete idiots, but I've seen it adopted by a lot of gullible people who believe that setting the future forward and just adopting the newest fucking thing is always the correct action. But man, oh man, have they looked stupid in the past year or so as the entire crypto market has just imploded in on itself because it's not a self-sustaining model. It's really poorly designed from the inside out. Here's an idea, use fiat money. That's what the real top G's like myself do. That's what the real revolutionaries do. I use real fucking paper cash money. I don't even use a debit or credit card or Venmo or PayPal or any of that shit. Because it just funds alt-right scumbags like Peter Thiel and Minchus Moldbug who just make money off PayPal and use it to fund Bitcoin and shit. So I just use federally backed paper notes. Federally backed fiat currency. That's the way to go. That's the fucking future. As I see it anyway. It's the best way to support local artists and voices that you give a shit about. And if you happen to live in a really crypto heavy area, I do pity you. Here in Denver it hasn't taken off all that much. It's kind of already dead, so Denver doesn't seem to be getting the crypto deluge, but I can only imagine how fucking awful it must be to go into like Times Square and just see a giant fucking Bored Ape and Shiba Inu and all this fucking bullshit on every billboard. Yeah, it's fucking pathetic, and Cryptobros are also obnoxious because they call themselves like punks and anarchists. Really offensive appropriation of terminology and culture like that, because punks and anarchists don't believe in social hierarchies or money of any kind, technologically backed or otherwise. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're not a fucking punk. You're not a fucking anarchist. You're fucking annoying is what you are if you buy into cryptocurrencies. Alright then, at number 4 we have Anglophiles. I've also made a video about Anglophilia called Why is Pro-Monarchism a Thing? These guys are very similar to the Weeaboos in that unknowingly, or maybe perhaps knowingly, they fetishize and glorify a country whose system fundamentally does not work. As a proponent of democracy, I cannot in good faith endorse a country that is a monarchy, because I believe that countries work best when people are allowed to vote and make their opinions known. And as far as I'm concerned, Britain is quite possibly the most backwards country in the world politically, save perhaps Sharia law countries. Their people are legitimately suffering because of it. There are so many British people who just wish that a real, legitimate, modern 21st century democracy could be instituted and the royal family could come to an end. And they are completely ignored by this annoying group of Americans who go, "Oh, you have a queen? Isn't that so quaint? Isn't that so cool? It's like a fairy tale kingdom." Meanwhile, actually living in London or Liverpool or somewhere is actually like really fucking hard for actual British people because, like, no shit, if you don't get to vote on things and you're not civically involved, your country will just fall to shit and become completely irrelevant. More than that, though, I find Anglophilia really offensive because America's principles are diametrically opposed to Britain's principles, and we're a democracy and they're a monarchy, and we kind of had an entire fucking founding war over this, but for whatever reason, I guess people don't read history books anymore, so people aren't aware that, like, America and Britain, in a best case scenario, should not be like political allies or all that chummy, because like our values are like diametrically opposed in basically every conceivable way. And the only reason we tend to like pretend like they're our friends is just because they speak the same language as us, which makes about as much sense as Spain being chummy with Mexico. You don't see that. Overall, though, you know, Britain is just a terrible country in that, like, they had as many witch trials as we did easily. They initiated the transatlantic slave trade, and they basically invented race science. Yet us Americans get all the blame for this shit. When people say they hate, like, European values in America, what they mean is they hate British values, because it's not like the French came over here and were, like, racist and shit. That's just a British thing. It's not a European thing. You don't see the frickin' French being, like, fucking weird But yeah, overall Anglophilia is just kind of the equivalent of weeabooism for Britain. It gets talked about a lot less, obviously, but I do find it more patently offensive and anti-American, almost on the same level I would consider like a Confederate to be anti-American, against American principles, diametrically opposed to the values that the Founding Fathers had when they put the Constitution down. Anglophilia gets talked about a lot less. You don't have to be a full-on Anglophobe like the guy from A Fish Called Wanda. Just treat Britain like a real country and not like a fairy tale kingdom, the same way you should treat Japan like a real country with a real history that impacts real people, and not like a magical anime kingdom, because they're both real countries and they both have extremely messed up pasts, and their citizens are both suffering from the monarchies that they're put under every single day, the terrible human rights abuses, and the racism and transphobia. Let's not forget all that. That's basically just a rite of passage in Britain. Transphobia up the wazoo. So yeah, overall that's Anglophilia for you. Moving on. Okay, at number 3 here we have furries. I can't fucking stand furries, and I know I'm late to the party in saying this. I know it's not exactly a revolutionary hot take anymore. Furries are delusional. There's nothing that makes me more depressed than seeing some depressed, lonely person put on an anthropomorphic animal costume and pretend to be an anthropomorphic bipedal animal. It's honestly pathetic and sad. There's nothing charming about it, there's nothing quirky about it, there's nothing even remotely interesting about it. It's fucking stupid, and I hope it fucking stops soon. Furries are indicative of the worst part of internet culture, where mentally ill, lonely, depressed people are encouraged to do extremely stupid and detrimental things because they think it'll win them internet points or get them famous or something like that. It's a really stupid subculture with absolutely no rational reason to exist. There is no productive justification to dress up in an animal costume and pretend to be an animal. What the fuck is this? I know this might be a hot take, but I think engaging in delusions like that, where you pretend you're something that you're just fundamentally not, is overall bad for your mental health. And given the amount of like bestiality enthusiasts and pedophiles and just straight up fucking Nazis that have been exposed in the furry fandom, I feel pretty comfortable saying that like 100% of these people just need therapy. They don't need to go to furry conventions and dress up as an animal person. They just need mental help. They don't need this shit. This only makes their lives worse and makes them more of a social outcast. And I know what argument you're going to put down in the comments, but Nick, furries are usually nice people, except for all the ones that are bestiality enthusiasts, but generally they're nice people. And that might be true. Maybe they are nice people, but they're also fucking boring people who crave validation and attention by dressing up in a fucking animal costume. Really, the furry movement speaks to America's unhealthy obsession with dog ownership and the way that we like treat our dogs as if they were people and treat our pets like they're humans, which they're just fundamentally not. We're way too obsessed with animals here in America. It's honestly fucking sick. Again, everything in moderation. If you own a pet and you like animals, that's fine. I like animals too. I don't fucking dress up like my pet because that's fucking weird. Like, imagine if I went to Party City and bought a big ketchup bottle costume and just wore that every day, and I wasn't an interesting person. I didn't produce anything of substance for society. I just wore a fucking ketchup bottle costume every day, and I was like, looky everyone, dressed up in a fucking ketchup bottle. People would call me out for my real, like, deep-seated need for attention, and they would also point out that I was batshit fucking insane. And they'd be right on both counts. I would be batshit fucking insane if I did that, and it'd be way worse if I was having intercourse with ketchup bottles every night. Ultimately, the way that furries demand acceptance and demand that people tolerate their shenanigans, and in some cases, even compare putting on a fucking furry costume to being trans, is highly insensitive to the trans experience, the LGBT community, yada yada. It's fucking depraved. Like, you're not an oppressed group You're not marginalized, you're extremely fucking mainstream. And this is something furries share in common with weeaboos, obviously. They're like, we're so against the grain, we're so countercultural. No. Anime's fucking mainstream, being a furry's fucking mainstream, it's gotten old. Like, you're not a fucking dog person. So why whine about how people aren't accepting my identity as a dog person? You're not a fucking dog, you're a human person. And as a proponent of humanism, as someone who believes that the species of Homo sapiens is a noble and righteous species that has real potential on this fucking planet, I cannot in any way condone or even remotely wrap my head around why someone would want to dress up as a fucking cat or whatever 24/7 and just live like that and go around with society calling them a freak. Like, how much is your dignity worth? Yeah, ultimately furries are cringe, and you can say whatever you... Nick, you're not being tolerant. Yeah, I don't think society functions optimally when a bunch of people think that they're animals. That's not a healthy society. And you sure don't see this shit over in the People's Republic of China. You don't see any fucking furries over there. Over in the glorious PRC, via state mandate, all furries are spayed and neutered. Godspeed, Mr. Jinping. Honor to your family. At number 2, we got the fucking incels. Holy shit. The incels are a vicious circle, a self-fulfilling prophecy where a bunch of guys who fucking suck are like, I don't get a girlfriend cause I'm shit, and then I'm shit and I don't get a girlfriend because of it, so it must mean that women don't like me, so I'm gonna be even more shit towards women. Really a tautological ideology. The incel movement is yet another one that is fundamentally just mental illness to the core, just societally destructive in every conceivable way, promoting misogynist ideology, breaking society down with its inherent insanity to the point where you start to question just what the fuck we're still doing here and how we didn't nuke ourselves 40 years ago. Obviously, a big figure in the incel scene is Negative XP, a real shitwad who makes songs like I Love the Cops and Girls with Dyed Hair are evil and shit like that, and he calls himself a punk. All his shit sounds like a bad Weezer ripoff. It doesn't sound like punk music at all. Sometimes he labels himself an e-punk, but I would more so call him an anti-punk, because nothing about his music is even remotely countercultural or transgressive or thought-provoking or politically literate. He thinks that Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a movie made in Hollywood, according to his song about Ramona Flowers, neglecting, of course, the fact that Scott Pilgrim vs. the World was made in Canada, which is about as far from Hollywood as you could get, but I don't know if Mr. XP is aware of that fact. I mean, I'm not a fan of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World either. It's an annoying fucking movie where Michael Cera plays an incel who stalks this girl around, is fucking annoying towards her, and then just spends the entire movie on a fucking love quest or whatever the fuck to have sex with her. That's a really fucking lame story, and as an asexual I don't understand it, but I don't understand movies generally where women are objectified to the level that they are in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which really is, in every conceivable way, an incel movie made by idiots. Negative XP seems to miss that point, and Negative XP is widely heralded as one of the big-time incel musicians. All his songs sound like extremely low-effort, indie rock, pop fucking crap, but he calls himself a punk, despite making songs where he actively praises the police, and he's like, I fucking love the police. Thank God for the police. People don't seem to understand that this isn't a punk sentiment. You can't say, I love the fucking police, and I love the judicial system exactly as it is. No need for societal change. I stand for Christian values. And this guy calls himself a fucking punk. You fucking fake. You fucking poser. I don't even consider myself a punk, but I'm gonna call this shit out. You're a fucking poser. The incel movement is fucking depressing because it just represents a sad, extremely illiterate, uneducated group of guys who America's educational system really has failed them, and they don't seem to understand basic gender studies, basic gender relations even. They don't understand women, how to talk to women, how to be smooth with a woman. They're not involuntarily celibate. That's really a misnomer. They're voluntarily celibate because they choose to hate women and be a shithead, and then you obviously aren't going to have sex, and you don't even really want sex. You just want to fucking whine and complain about how nobody likes you because you're a shitty person. And then when people complain about you, you whine more. And it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? As a well-adjusted man myself who talks to plenty of women daily, not romantically obviously because I'm asexual and I only have platonic female friends, but I have a lot more than the average incel does. I can say that if incels completely breed themselves out of the gene pool by just not having sex with any women and not reproducing, I really won't care. And I understand that a lot of figures like Vouch and whatever, like, oh, we need to be nice to these guys because they're just vulnerable and they've lost their way and we need to be sympathetic towards them. If you're a fucking incel, you're the fucking worst. Just stop. Just like fucking stop. Just learn how to talk to women. It's not hard. You just go up, you say, hey, let's talk about shit. And then we'll talk about shit with you. You just don't know how to talk to anyone. You probably can't talk to men well either. You just can't talk to anyone. You're just like illiterate. Incels, more like illiterate cells, am I right? Okay, here we go. Some honorable mentions here. As with the last video, these are subcultures that I just find particularly insipid, but didn't put on the list for whatever reason. First up, we got, of course, Dubstep, the bane of the early 2010s. It's pretty much died off at this point. You don't see too many big-time dubstep producers anymore, but holy shit, was I sick of hearing just electronic songs that all sounded the fucking same with that. I like IDM. I'm not such a big fan of EDM. I like IDM. I like Boards of Canada and Aphex Twin and Fatboy Slim. That's the type of electronic music I consume. I can't fucking stand dubstep. There's this video by like Timba and Toast where he's like, dubstep was originally a British thing and we invented it. And it's like, yeah, maybe it was good at first, but like, you did unleash this behemoth onto the world, and Skrillex can't be held entirely responsible for just like how mindless shit it is. Like, I'm sure plenty of the early British dubstep was also like ass. Overall, dubstep is a really shit genre of music and an even worse subculture. I really can't think of anyone more obnoxious than someone who like listens to dubstep on the reg just as like a constant genre of music. Like, who even listens to it? I'm so glad that electronic music in recent years has gotten like deep and complex, and producers like Hudson Mohawk have gotten big after the whole like Seabat drama blew up, and you got songs like Big Stan, which are all things considered pretty good electronic pieces. A much more cerebral and thoughtful line to them than the average dubstep song, which is just like total shit. We got Tech Utopians. These are similar to the Cryptobros, but not explicitly centered around crypto. I've made an entire parody series where I dress up as this type of person and act annoying for around 5 minutes. Tech Utopians generally believe that technology is the solution to all societal problems, even when that obviously isn't inherently the case, and there are solutions that don't focus around technology, like perhaps political lobbying or legislation or really anything besides a fucking rocket tomorrows. That doesn't really solve anything. These people actively promote the privatization of all scientific industries. They are against public science and therefore giant billionaire leeches like Elon Musk, who is a fucking idiot. Tech Utopians seem to think that pushing society forward doesn't mean like improving trans rights or making it easier for incarcerated people to vote or helping out drug addicts. They think that making society better just means getting a robot implant in your arm, and that will make everything all better. And everything needs to be ramped up to scale 5,000 right the fuck away, instead of just using extremely simple approaches to extremely easy to solve societal problems that could be solved immediately if people just fucking voted like in a democracy. But tech utopians are actively against democracy because they think that if they put all their trust in the giant geniuses like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and again Minch's fucking mold bug, then all their problems will just evaporate because these guys are fucking mega geniuses who can solve every problem way better than the unified collective will of the people. Tech utopianism is an extremely toxic mindset, extremely societally detrimental, and I hope it dies out soon, but we currently seem to be kind of in the height of it. Okay, one final honorable mention here for sports. People who just view sports all the fucking time. Here's what I have to ask. What the fuck do you find in just footage of a bunch of guys ramming into a field for an hour fucking straight? Again, everything in moderation. If you tune into the Super Bowl once a year, that's fine. If you follow every single fucking football game, just by the numbers, just every single one, like, how is your brain not moldy at this point from just consuming so much fucking slop? Watch a fucking movie. It's not even like you can really have civic pride in this, because every single football team and baseball team and hockey team and really every fucking sport, they all win the same amount of times, statistically speaking. Like, there's not a football team who's like the best and they win every time. That doesn't happen. Like, every state has an equally weighted football team. So you're essentially just watching all 50 states win equally, the exact same proportion all the fucking time. Doesn't this get boring? I just feel like it should, as somebody who regularly engages with like really fun entertainment. What the fuck do you get out of this? Like, I get it with professional wrestling because that shit's all scripted and they have like outrageous characters like Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker. What the fuck is compelling about Tom Brady? He's just like a guy. He's just a guy, he puts on the fucking shoulder pads and helmet, goes out, gets a bunch of concussions with all these other guys on a big fucking field, and they just ram into each other for an hour straight. And the really sad thing is, like, Americans don't even appreciate baseball anymore, even though baseball is like the smartest fucking sport, and it's purely American. And I've gone to a baseball game, and I had fun. I don't watch baseball obsessively, because, like, who would? But baseball is a much more, like, methodical sport that actually requires skill and thought in addition to pure brute strength. And it's also just a lot easier to understand if you're a basic spectator. But football is, by its very nature, exclusionary and designed for only the most obsessive, brain-rotted weirdos out there who just sit around on their asses and pretend like they're doing something of great societal importance by showing up to the stadium with their fucking Broncos jerseys and Bronco mufflers. And here in Denver, you see so much fucking Bronco fans, and it's like, this is all you have to be proud of Denver? Just a fucking football team? Every city has a football team. Be proud of more in Denver than your fucking sports teams, for fuck's sake. Heck, be proud no matter where you live, whatever city you live in. There's more to your city than the fucking sports teams. I think realizing that is the first step towards just like becoming disillusioned with sports. It really isn't an industry worth following in any capacity, because nothing interesting ever happens in it, and once you've seen one game of football or golf or whatever, you've seen them all. They're all the fucking same. Just a green field and some guys on it. Okay, and with that, it's time to talk about the #1 most cringe subculture. I'm talking about the fucking alt-right. What a bunch of fucking bozos. Nick Fuentes and fucking Gavin McInnes and Steven Crowder and Stefan Molyneux and Jordan Peterson. All these other fucking clowns, half of whom are Canadian because they come down here to America. They're like, Canada's too left-leaning and they won't let us be transphobic. So we're gonna come down here to America and pretend like we're American and like we understand American politics and spread our neo-Nazi shit down here. The alt-right really is the most cringe-worthy political movement. And the really sad thing is, you know, I'm a Democrat, I'm a fucking liberal. I'm an Obama, FDR, JFK style liberal. I remember a point in time, believe it or not, when there were actually some like establishment Republicans who were actually like kind of level-headed, like back during the Obama administration. Those days are long gone. All of them have been selectively weeded out, gone out of office, or converted into just mindless Trump-simping drones. The alt-right is fundamentally anti-American. It bastardizes American ideals and the American aesthetic while promoting ideas that the founding fathers would have found absolutely fucking insane, and which any modern, rational, sane person should also find absolutely batshit fucking insane. The alt-right is the giantest crowd of fucking clowns on the internet and in the real world too. And if I was in the alt-right, I would be fucking embarrassed every day of my life. Imagine waking up every single day and finding out that you're part of the fucking intellectual dark web alongside fucking Ben Shapiro. The best way you can combat the alt-right and their terrible fucking takes is to just make fun of them, because all of these little people are very insecure about their masculinity and their Western chauvinist ideals or whatever the fuck. And the minute you call them out on their bullshit or attack them in a really incisive, comprehensive way that the average person will understand and resonate with, the alt-right loses 100% of their power and their batteries just drop to zero. Because they can't handle the super hot fire that I'm spitting right now. Because I'm a fucking leftist boss, and I'm the average alt-righter's worst fucking nightmare. Nick Fuentes, you better fucking run, because I'm Nick Cicada, and I eat jokers like you for fucking breakfast, okay? Yeah, the alt-right is hands down the worst subculture I can possibly think of. Imagine being part of this. Just fucking imagine that. Like, I can't even comprehend how embarrassing it must be to be one of these fucking shitheads and just espouse all this garbage. What a bunch of absolute grifters, hypocrites, and simpletons. What a fucking embarrassment. It makes me embarrassed to be a human person. Makes me embarrassed to be living in the same country, nay, the same planet as this detestable swine. That's all I can really say about the alt-right. They're not that fucking deep. Anyway, that's my list of the top 10 cringest subcultures. If you like this list, then go watch my one about the top 10 coolest subcultures, where I cover some subcultures that are actually worth looking into and actually present some interesting ideas. None of these ones do. These ones all suck. These are the bottom of the barrel. And I get that by making this video, I've probably made some enemies in these respective subcultures, so if you think you have what it takes to defeat me in the marketplace of ideas, then leave your hot takes and spicy comments below. Until next time, I'll see you in the next one. I like these two lists. These were a lot of fun to make, because for whatever reason I just happen to know a lot about these various subcultures, and I spend a lot of time studying social movements and the like. So I feel particularly well inclined to speak on this subject. Yeah, it's been fun. Sayonara, suckers.